Hello, welcome to another interview with the experts. And today, I'm doing an interview with Kingsley Guy. Oh, this is okay. Flip it. But Kingsley Guy, he is a journalist, and he wrote the book Queen of the Heavens. So I read this book, and you can get it in Amazon. And I loved it because it is a historical novel based in Egypt with pharaohs and queens and goddesses, and but it really goes a lot into the spiritual part that we can all live now in this day. We talk about some really interesting experiences that he had that led him to become more spiritual and going to yoga, that led him to write this book. I'm not going to ruin it for you. Listen to this interview. It's really, really good. And you just love a good novel to really just, get educated in in the process and really learn something useful, and also, get entertained, but also inspired. The protagonist of this novel, Tuya, it's a commoner that rose from being a commoner to becoming the Queen of Egypt. And she is just a very empowered woman, and I love that about her because I'm a lot about empowering. So I really hope you enjoyed this website, this interview, and I will be posting the link to Kingsley's website so that you can get the book there, or you can just look for it in Amazon. All right, thank you. Bye. Hi, Kingsley. I'm so excited to have you here in my interview with experts. And I just enjoy so much reading your book, Queen of the Heavens. I love historical novels. And when I talked to you, when we met in person, and you told me about, the main character of this book, how, back in the day, in the Pharaoh's time, how she really acted as such an empowered woman. I was just so thrilled to read the book, mostly because I also love historical novels. I don't necessarily am a big reader of history books, but through novels, that is such a great way to really, learn, get entertained and also, learn a lot about, history. So tell us about your background. It looks like you know so much about Egypt. So how's that?
Well, my background actually was a journalist. I was a senior editor at one of a major daily newspaper, the South Florida Sun Sentinel, for 23 years. I spent my entire career in journalism. I was sent over to the Middle East to do some work out of Israel and Jordan. I had some vacation time coming, so I paid my own way over to Egypt and absolutely fell in love with the country. This was back in 1997. And I just studied it, immersed myself in its culture, and I'd always wanted to write a novel. I think all journalists want to write novels or write some kind of a book and leave in print something other than yesterday's news. So I had also as soon as I got to Egypt, though, I recognized that there was such a similarity in the iconography, the mythology to East Indian culture. And I'm very well versed in that. I practiced yoga. I've been to India a couple times. So I saw the similarities in many of the myths and the statuary. And I said, maybe I can take my knowledge of Indian spiritual understanding, East Indian, and apply it to a novel in ancient Egypt. Unfortunately, I didn't have an idea. An idea eventually came to me, and I went back to Egypt again on my vacation time to do some more study on site and really get a feeling for the country. And the novel, that's where the novel came from. Now, originally, the novel was not what you read. The original idea for a novel was to be from the point of view of a pharaoh. But the novel you have now is the point of view of this pharaoh's mother, Queen Tut. And it starts out as a little girl, and ideas kept coming to me and coming to me and coming to me, and I just shifted the whole focus of the book and wrote the book that you have read. I've got the first draft of a second novel from the point of view of her son, the Pharaoh, but the book you read is about Queen Toya. She was born a commoner, actual historical figure. She is the mother of Ramses II, who was one of the great pharaohs of Egypt. But she's an actual historical figure, and she's born a commoner. She's blessed with miraculous healing powers, and the spirit of Isis, the goddess Isis, flows through her. And she catches the attention of the royal court, is married, becomes queen, and I deal with the events of her life that I think I've made quite interesting. It's fiction, but she's an actual historical character, and I believe quite impactful in the life of Ramses the Great and the life of her husband, who was Seti the First. So I weave the story around that in a spiritual setting and try to really delve into the spirituality of ancient Egypt, which I believe is quite similar to the spiritual dynamics of India today. So that's how it came about.
Yeah, wow, that's just so fascinating. What fascinates me the most is how a man can write from a perspective of a woman. I could never write a book pretending, that I'm a man to understand and thinking like a man. So how do you manage to do that?
Well, one thing I always say, I probably couldn't have done it if I was any younger. I've had 3 stepsisters. I've had my relationships as I've gone through life, and hope that by the time I was ready to read it, I had at least grasped a little bit of an understanding of women, although I don't know if that's completely possible to do it.
No, I mean, you nailed pretty much, everything. It's like, how is he creating this amazing character? And really, it's something that, in a way, we all fantasize about being somebody that, it's alluding to her feminine energy, but still has this masculine power to create her life and to not necessarily command, but inspire her foot down to what she wants and what should be done. And I really like how she was so patient with the pharaoh, with her husband Seti. I would have divorced him right away. I totally would have divorced him. Like, you've been an asshole, but she was able to see way past that.
Yep. And work it out eventually.
At the end, yes, I love it that there's a beautiful ending and happy ending for both of them. And I'm not going to ruin the end for anybody, but go ahead.
But, the Greeks had the muses. What was it? 9 muses. And all the muses were feminine, and the muses dealt with the arts. And I'm not quite sure where inspiration comes from, but I know when I am writing, I will get into what I like to call the zone. Some tennis players get into the zone, and golfers get into the zone, and they start hitting. Golfers hit shots one after the other. Where did that come from? It's like it's coming from outside of you. It's not just you that is doing it. And I think when I do writing, that sometimes often happens to me. I will my first drafts when I write fiction are all done in longhand. And then I put that into the computer and I'd edit and hone it and polish it in the computer. But my first drafts I do in longhand. It's almost like the ideas, I just ask, where did those ideas come from? I don't think they come from the brain. I think sometimes creativity, you get the brain out of the way, and that's when the ideas start to really.
Well, and you said that you are very knowledgeable on the Hindi spirituality. So tell us about that. How do you get into that? And please educate me. I know nothing about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got into that actually when I was a young man, studied student, went over at 19 and 20. I lived in East Asia as an undergraduate student, and I learned something about Eastern metaphysics. And my travels took me all across Asia and Europe, mainly by surface, but it got me through India. And I absolutely fell in love with India. And some amazing events took place in India at that time in my life. And I pledged I was going to go back to India at some point in my life, made a pledge. And 20 years later, I was hit a crisis in my life. And my other book, Piercing the Veil, A Skeptical Journalist Discovers Unseen Worlds, that's what I deal with. And I deal with the spiritual experiences and some amazing events in my life, some of which defied the known laws of physics. But anyway, I honored my pledge, and I went back to India at that point, and transformative, life-changing events took place in India at that time that launched me on a spiritual quest, a spiritual journey, and that journey entailed exploring yoga in the sense of meditation, and the East Indian spiritual dynamics, and that took me into knowledge of that took me into the Egyptian and study of Egyptian spirituality. And the last 33 years of my life have been spent on a spiritual journey, and writing these books is all a part of that. And it's been an adventure. It's been exciting.
I bet any type of spiritual, trip, and I work pretty much 100% with women, so I don't really get to talk to a lot of men, unless it's just the weather, in whatever it needs to get spoken about, really. But really deep conversations I have with a lot of women, that I do. Mm-hmm. And I think that the spiritual awakening they all have gone through, or that we haven't gone through and we need to, I think it's just so impactful in any person's life. And I find it more common women looking for it than men looking for it. Where in your studies and writing your book can you see your knowledge and your own personal experience growing your spirituality to help others, men or women, doesn't matter?
Yeah. And that's why that's why I actually wrote the novel as well. I tried to get spiritual ideas across in as let's say comfortable or as easily absorbable way as I could by trying to write, I think, a good novel. And I think I accomplished that. I may say so myself. I think it's a really good novel. Excellent novel.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me just make a parenthesis. The one thing that came across so clearly with the character Tuya throughout the novel is her constant meditation. Mm-hmm. Constantly, just was a lot of meditation, and the answers came to her, by the gods, by the realm, and it's something that we hardly do.
Yes, and I think we're maybe doing more and more of it. I look at yoga and what's been imported from India, which a lot of it wouldn't be recognizable over in India. The idea of going into a hot yoga studio.
Yes.
I mean, you're not going to find that over in India. The idea is to get meditative states, to get transformative states, and with Tuya as well, magic. Magic was what we call magic, not hocus pocus magic, but the magic of dealing with spiritual entities, and the magic that comes with chanting, the magic that comes with ritual, all very much a part of. It was a part of life, and this was not considered to be something strange or esoteric. This was life. This was how you lived your life.
Right. It was part of her daily life. It was a ritual, as you said, a ritual. And I believe strongly in rituals. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to get caught in our daily activities and forget about that part of us, the rituals and the connectivity, our higher being and all that. And for her, it was, for them, it's just part of their daily life. I think it's like
And,
in the top, I think even before eating.
and I think one of the things that in the 21st century, 20th century as well, we started losing touch with ritual. There aren't many places you find deep ritual anymore. Some of the churches, you'll find it. When they changed the Catholic Mass from Latin to English, I'm not so sure that was or to vernacular, the native language, not English. English in this country, obviously Spanish in Mexico. But when they changed it to the vernacular language, I'm not sure that it gained anything. I mean, the Latin sort of, at least for me, and I'm not a Catholic, but I was baptized Catholic, so I have been to the Catholic churches. But the idea of the Latin, you didn't have to understand it. It was the experience, I think, that transformative experience, and we're missing that so much.
Yeah, you know what? Let me make another parenthesis here, but you're right, because I think if we were listening to a mass in Latin, we wouldn't be concentrating in understanding the meaning of the message, or getting daydreaming somewhere else because it's a boring, whatever. But you can concentrate more in feeling it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It'd be interesting. There's got to be a mass in Latin somewhere.
Oh, there are some. It's interesting too when you're talking about feeling it. St. Francis of Assisi, the great 12th century, early 13th century over in Italy, told his disciples at one point, you just have to get rid of your books, throw away your books. You've got to absorb the spirituality through your skin. And of course, St. Francis went out and talked to the animals, and he probably would have been considered a nutcase today, and put on Valium or some such thing. But we have lost so much of that. But we spoke about the Queen Toya. I mean, she was a goddess figure, the spirit of Isis, the goddess Isis flowed through her. And it was a very feeling person. And I think when you look at Catholicism, you look at the Virgin Mary, it's more of a feeling. It's not the attraction that to Mary. And many of the native populations are come to the Catholic Church through Mary, not through Jesus, but through Mary, through the feminine aspect. And one of the things that I tried to point out in the book, one of the themes of the book is the divine feminine, that we are in the Western society, the Godhead is always male, dating back to the Hebrew Bible, the male God. Not the case in ancient Egypt, not the case in India. You've got male deities, but you've got female deities. You've got the balance of male and female, which I think our society is out of balance, and I think is maybe gradually regaining some balance in regards to that. So that was part of the theme of the book, the divine feminine. And I think it's a theme that's you're seeing in other things as well. The Da Vinci Code, for instance, Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, where he talks about Mary Magdalene being the consort of Jesus. I mean, it brings that in that book, which I have to give him credit. It's not a great brilliant piece of literature, but I think he hit upon a theme that really resonated, and people might not even realize that's why they resonated as a book. But I think the theme of the divine feminine comes through in that book very much. And I think you're going to see that theme more and more in Western society.
Oh, I truly believe that. I think that because we women tend to worry more about our personal growth. I tell you by personal experience, because I've had my share of relationships, and while I continued and put a lot of effort into my personal growth, I left my partners behind. And as much as I would like try to bring them with me, here are some books, here is some retreats, here is some workshops online, here is, some free coaching, it's different, you need to like grow. And they wouldn't. So so that's what I've seen in my life. Maybe I'm sure there's a lot of men out there in the personal growth, but thank God no men are listening to this, most likely. But the other thing that I really enjoyed about the character of Duya in this book is how, I mean, she did have some struggle, but eventually she was able to let go and accept the circumstances that she didn't want at the beginning. It's like, this is not what I want. I don't want to get married. Or when the Pharaoh got mad at her and kind of like emotionally split up with her, and she was able to listen to her inner voice, the goddess, the deities, and recognize that this had to happen, and trust the gods, trust, where you're going. This needs to happen. And we get, the way I translated it in our modern world is that we get so focused when things don't go our way. And we believe that, why is this happening to me? And that's, I work all this hard for this result, or I put all this effort, or I gave so much, and this is what I get. And what we need to recognize is that things don't happen to us, they happen for us. And it is what we all have, a destiny, and things have to happen, in order for us to take us there. So it's really definitely so inspiring character about the faith. The faith that she had, the strength, the inner strength, and how she was able to stand on her own. After her, I was crushed when her parents passed away. And she's a single daughter, only child. So suddenly, and she's cast out by the husband. So it's like, I don't want to be you, girl. It's like, you might be queen of Egypt, but you're pretty much alone here. And but she didn't feel alone. That was the most amazing thing. She had herself, she had the goddess inside of her, and she it just had a lot of faith. So it was very inspiring. So tell us about your other book. I haven't even read the excerpt of that, so I have no idea what is that about.
Well, the other book is called Piercing the Veil: A Skeptical Journalist Discovers Unseen Worlds. And it's a brief memoir, and it kept brief. I think it's about 140 pages and about 14,000 words. It can be read in an hour and a half, 2 hours, and with some beautiful illustrations as well. But it's a spiritual journey that I have been on, and I'm very upfront about it. I discovered I was alcoholic when I was about 33 years ago. And it came down to a life or death situation. I was having a great career. I had a very fine position at a very fine newspaper, but alcohol had gotten the better of me over the years. And for people to recover from alcoholism, it generally requires some sort of a spiritual journey, acceptance of a higher power. And it was life or death. So that's when I went back to India and honored my pledge to go back to India. And I relate the events that transpired early in my life, and relating to my mother's suicide and some other of the struggles I faced and I had to deal with. And the only way I could deal with them was going on a spiritual journey. And took me to amazing places, took me to India, took me to the Middle East, took me to Egypt, took me to various spiritual sites in this country. all the time I'm working on a daily newspaper and have a very visible job. My name's on the masthead of a major daily newspaper. And so, it's not one of those things that you say to your boss, hey, I'm going up to New York. I'm going to spend 2 weeks in an ashram, or something like that. You
Right.
just don't talk about that. But the events that took place, just absolutely some amazing events. And like I said, some defying the laws of physics. One of the people I deal with in the book is Edgar Mitchell, who was the sixth man to walk on the moon, one of the Apollo astronauts. And his daughter, Kimberly, actually wrote the foreword for the book. But coming back from the moon on the space capsule, he entered what is known as the Sanskrit as a state of samadhi. In Buddhism, something similar to what they might call nirvana. But I had experienced that state of samadhi for about 4 hours. It's that when the veil between the individual consciousness and the cosmic consciousness vanishes, and you become the sense of oneness with the cosmos. It's the most amazing event experience of my life. I was in it about 4 hours, and he entered that when he was coming back from the moon. And
by accident or on purpose?
I entered it by going through, I was up at an ashram, and I went through Vedic rituals presided over by Brahmin priests at the ashram. It was 2 weeks up there, and I got back to Fort Lauderdale, and that night I entered that state of samadhi. I read about it. I knew about it. I never thought I'd ever attain it. I thought you had to sit in the Himalayas for 40 years before you'd attain that. But so I didn't intend to go into it, but it was the result of me doing the practices and going through the rituals that I did enter. Edgar Mitchell went into it spontaneously coming back from the moon. Now here's an MIT doctorate. The doctorate from MIT. He's an engineer, he's a scientist, he's a pilot, and he enters this state and had no idea what it was, but it so fascinated him that he started exploring the scientific foundation of the spiritual experience. Founded the Institute of Noetic Sciences out in California. And I deal with, he's one of the people I deal with in the book, but he believed that the old paradigm where we separated spirituality from the material world and from the sciences had broken down. It's time, the old Isaac Newton physics and the Descartes dualism, that old paradigm doesn't work anymore, and we've got to start creating a new paradigm where we merge our understandings of the sciences with the spirituality and the wisdom of the ages, reconnect with some of the wisdom of the ages. So that's, I deal with him in the book. I deal with other experiences I had, Kundalini experiences, and actually the appearance out of nowhere of a seemingly out of nowhere of an icon. Just these amazing experiences that can't be explained by what we know right now about physics. Not saying they defied the laws of physics. I'm saying they defied what we know as the laws of physics. But there's so much more out there that we need to learn. So that's what this book is about. I'm not trying to preach any kind of a dogma. I'm not. I say up front, I'm not a guru. I'm not a preacher. I'm not an imam. I'm not any of those things. I'm just a journalist who sought to save his life by embarking on a spiritual journey. And this is what happened. You can believe it or you can't believe it, but I'll tell you, it all happened, and it happened the way I wrote it. And,
so what would be your message for others in that book?
Pardon? I'm sorry?
What's your message for people who read the book?
The message for people to read the book is, hey, open your minds and open your hearts and realize that spiritual realms are real. And one of the reasons I wrote this was to get people talking about these things. Like I said, I couldn't talk about this when I was, my credibility would have been, as a journalist, would have been shot if people thought that Kingsley's got off the deep end. and he's lost it. But I didn't lose it. I kind of lived the parallel existence where I'm dealing with politics largely, and governors, and, you know, and senators, and state representatives, and business people. I'm living that life as a journalist. Uh-huh. And on the other life, I'm embarking on a spiritual journey that I sort of kept to myself, except to my closest friends. But now, it's been a while since I've worked on a newspaper, and I'm free to express myself the way I want to express myself. So the message is these spiritual realms are real. Start talking about them. Let's see if we can't get a dialogue going. That's why I'm starting my blog. I'm going to start a YouTube channel where I'm going to interview people who've had spiritual experiences. A lot of them out there. I think living not that far from me down in Miami area is Brian Weiss, name some of your viewers you might be familiar with. He wrote years ago the book Many Lives, Many Masters. He was a psychiatrist, head of psychiatry at Mount Sinai Hospital. I think he was Harvard educated. And he regressed patients hypnotically as part of the therapy. And patients started talking about past lives that they'd had. Wow. And the books he wrote sort of brought the idea of reincarnation into the forefront of the Western world. You go over to India, you go over to Tibet, you go over to Nepal. This is second nature. I mean, nobody doubts the fact that
there's other lives.
Yeah, that there are other lives, but for for somebody like Brian Weiss to come out with his position as the head of psychiatry of a major hospital, he knew he was going to catch some flack. And it's like, I know I'm going to catch some flack writing this book. But like I said, this is what happened to me. I'm not a guru. I'm not a preacher. I didn't spend 40 years up in the Himalayas meditating. I lived a very, very practical, worldly life in my career, but explored spiritual realms as well. So these things happen. I felt kind of an obligation, a journalistic obligation.
Absolutely, because a lot of people, might go through these experiences and they don't even know what they are. They get scared, and they talk about it, and they think they're crazy or possessed by the devil or something like that. Yeah. But what would somebody want to pursue to actually how do you call it, this 4-day thing that you had?
The state of samadhi. No, I was in it for 4 hours.
4 hours. I'm sorry, 4 hours. 4 hours. So what would somebody want to actually cause that?
It's happened. Sometimes it happens spontaneously, from what I've understood. It happened to Edgar Mitchell spontaneously. Now, not all of us are able to ride in a space capsule coming back from the moon. I mean, as he described it, as the capsule is rotating and he could see the sun and the moon and the heavens, and then had this recognition of the totality of the universe of which he is a part. As he says, we all the matter in us came from the stars, and in a sense we are all stardust. Yeah. It's that feeling of connection. I think people might get a glimpse of it from time to time, but to enter it for a extended period of time, certainly meditation, spiritual practices, open one to that. I entered it after going through 2 weeks at an ashram and several rituals with these Brahmin priests. So it's not something that you can necessarily say, I'm going to do it, but there are things that can be done that can lead to it. But I think the spiritual journey of some kind certainly, I think, enhances the possibility of it happening, or coming back from the moon in a space capsule.
Yeah, right. This type of experience as a way to connect with something bigger than you to see where we come from, or is it something just to connect more with yourself and your purpose and just be more grounded?
Yeah, you know, I describe in Queen of the Heavens, the novel, and I do it through fiction, but Queen Toya actually, it is.
That's true. She does transcend
Yeah,
for.
she does transcend,
That's
and
how you
there's,
start the novel. You know, she's in a 4 day, I think.
yeah,
Right.
she's in, but she's in these states, and at one point she realizes that I could spend eternity like this, and then I realized I am eternity.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm in my. It is a state that cannot be described through words. It maybe can be described through metaphor, but the best I could do was I am in eternity. My feeling was I could spend eternity like this, and this was not an exaggeration.
Mm-hmm.
It was I could spend eternity like this, and then the realization I am eternity, and that was what came to me in that state. Now, no matter how pleasurable a state we can imagine as we are living our daily lives, no matter how pleasurable, the thought of spending a week in that state, or after a while, you may start getting a little bored, but there was just no sense that there would ever be any boredom here, because you are not in eternity, you are eternity. And just a fascinating time in my life. Changed my life. Once you
I bet
want to
it
experience.
does. I bet it does. And I think that for most of us, just pure mortals, it is so hard to understand like the unreachable, the fact that we are all one, the fact that we are all God, that God is everywhere and within us. It's just so hard to really grasp the concept. So the only thing that I can understand what you're trying to communicate with us is that through this experience you can actually finally feel it.
Actually feel it, and it is life changing. I would not have written Queen of the Heavens, I don't think, if I had not been in that, or my other book if I had not experienced that. And it was not something I thought I would ever experience. I mean, you read about it in the spiritual literature, but like I said, you know, maybe if you go up to a cave and you in the Himalayas and you meditate for 20 years, maybe something will happen.
Right.
But it didn't require 20 years of meditation, but didn't require meditation. It did for me anyway, going through these various rituals. And for Edgar Mitchell, the tale coming back from the moon. So, but it does exist. Kundalini energy. That's another word that is coming. Sanskrit word, but it's the movement of energy up the spine, and classic movement of the Kundalini is you feel a stirring in the base of the spine. This energy comes up, and you feel your chest expand and whoosh out the top of your head. And I read about that and said, well, okay, maybe 20 years in the Himalayas that might happen to me, but I'm up at the ashram. And I feel stirring in the base of my spine, and whoosh, and 30 seconds later, whoosh.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't read about it, I would have thought that I was something dire physically had happened to me. I would have probably called 911, been taken to the hospital. I had done $10,000 worth of tests, and I'd have found nothing wrong with me. But I knew what it was, and I was able to just enjoy it, because that took me into a blissful state, sort of floating in a sea of bliss. So these things happen, and they're real. And I think in our materialistic world, people will look at it and scoff at it and say, it's a bunch of nonsense. Right. But it's not. It's not. Some of my spiritual dealings or events that I talk about took place in seances, which, I think some fundamentalists might think, oh, it's the devil at work. No, it's energy. It's energy.
Yeah, it's energy, yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think
everything is energy. I totally, feel on energy, and I just think that still, I left your book. I left it in Texas, and I'm going there in 10 days. So I want to read in the plane when I'm heading back to Mexico. But definitely, I really enjoy. I would stay up until 2 a.m. Because I would have days in which I couldn't really grab the book. And other times it's like, okay, it's 10 o'clock and maybe I'll read half an hour, and then I just get into the story, and next thing you know, I had to go to bed. I had to get up at 6:30. So I really, really enjoyed it, and I see it. Your teachings through these books, I really see them as a very entertaining, because we need to be entertained sometimes to actually pay attention. And actually get inspired, to actually do something to better ourselves. But definitely I see your stories as a great way, for people, personal growth, for connecting with themselves, to really understand so much about ourselves, which at the end we understand and embrace who we are, then we can embrace everybody around us. So where can people find your books?
Well, they can find them in ebook form or also in the print form at Amazon.com would be the best site. I also have my website, which is KingsleyGuy.com. That's KingsleyGuy.com, and that will take you to my website where you can. I'm trying to build a community too. Like I said, we get a community going with blog posts and YouTube channels, and people can sign up for that. They can also get to Amazon through my website, and they can read a little bit about the books, both Piercing the Veil and Queen of the Heavens, right there. So you can order it from Amazon or go to my website, KingsleyGuy.com. That'll take you there, and you can find out more about the book, more about me.
Fantastic. Okay, yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much, Kingsley, for giving us 1 hour of your precious time and sharing with you so much. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, Argentina, I want to thank you. That passed quickly as well.
Yes, it did.
I appreciate the invitation.
Okay, don't go away.